Hello and welcome back to Moonlit Journal. Today I was planning to film my June flip through video, and in fact I spent quite some time yesterday filming that video, and ultimately I just ended up scrapping it because there has been something else on the forefront of my mind, another topic that I'm interested in and that I wanted to talk about instead. So for today, I wanted to revisit my Journal With Me series. I only have one video uploaded in this series so far, and it was several months ago, I think last December. And some of you may have seen that video, but it was me talking about being in a journaling slump. And so the thought for this series was that it would be a space for me to just talk about topics that I'm interested in and kind of do it as a voiceover while I'm journaling, so that you're not just staring at my hands the whole time. But the thought was that these topics that I talk about would be related to my journaling practice as a whole. And because these videos are going to be really focused on very specific topics, they'll probably be shorter than my typical videos, but I think it's good to have variety, and ultimately, I always want to be authentic to myself on this channel. So I want to share the things that truly interest me, and hopefully you don't mind that this might be shorter. So today, what I wanted to talk about was the relationship between journaling and aloneness. I think there is a strong correlation between these two things, between journaling and being alone. And I deliberately use the term aloneness rather than loneliness. I feel that aloneness is a state of simply being alone. There's no further meaning to it, no interpretation that needs to be added, versus loneliness is really the state of feeling alone. And I think it's very easy for us to mistake being alone for feeling alone, but they are two very, very different things. I know they're not the same because some of the times in my life where I've felt most lonely were when I was in the company of other people. And some of the times where I felt the most at ease and at peace and most fulfilled was actually when I was alone. So to me, aloneness isn't inherently negative. In fact, I find it to be one of the most fulfilling and beautiful states of being that we can experience. The reason that I wanted to talk about this topic is because I've observed that many of us who keep journals also tend to have a smaller social circle, and we tend to be more reclusive in nature. And I know that this might sound like a huge generalization, so please know that I understand we all have different life experiences, different natures and personalities and opinions, but I just wanted to share my own very, very subjective perspective based on the observations that I've made in my own life. So hopefully some of this resonates with you, but if you have a completely different experience, I would love to hear that in the comments as well. Going back to what I was saying though, I found that those of us who keep journals tend to also keep to themselves. Many of the journal YouTubers I watch have stated that they spend a lot of time alone, that they don't have a lot of friends, or that they're highly introverted. And I just wanted to talk about why I think this might be the case, and ultimately why I think this isn't a bad thing. So first and foremost, I think one of the reasons why so many of us are quote unquote alone is because, simply put, the mere act of journaling requires alone time with one's thoughts. Keeping a journal inherently means spending a lot of time on your own, documenting your thoughts, feelings, memories, ideas, and so on. It's a solitary practice, and it's meant to be experienced and enjoyed when you have quiet moments to yourself. And as this practice eventually becomes a more and more important part of your life, you may find yourself deliberately choosing your own company over that of other people so that you can engage with your journal more often. But I also believe something else happens as your journaling practice grows and becomes a larger part of your life. I think your understanding of yourself deepens, regardless of what it is you write about, whether you use a journal to commonplace, memory keep, reflect on your life, or just jot down ideas or observations. And even if you don't write at all, if you keep a visual diary, a sketchbook, or a junk journal, whatever it is you choose to document over time, as you fill up your pages, you build your sense of self. When you take intentional time to express your innermost curiosities, your thoughts and feelings onto a page, you give life to those parts of yourself that otherwise go overlooked. You really become acquainted with yourself. You begin to truly know yourself. And with that comes a certain self-assurance, a confidence in your identity, an unwavering knowledge of who you are. And what is understanding but another name for love? Self-understanding is self-love. And as your love for yourself grows, your need for external validation lessens. As your knowledge of yourself deepens, the need or reliance on having company lessens. At least for me, this has been the case. And I have found that I have a well of fascinating thoughts to expand on, and I have infinite facets of myself to still discover. I think it makes sense then that the more you introspect and self-reflect, the less easy and less enjoyable it becomes to have surface-level conversations and surface-level friendships as a whole. I think this is the other reason so many of us experience aloneness. When you spend so much time analyzing your innermost thoughts and feelings, you can more easily discern when a relationship is feeding your soul and fostering your growth and bringing you joy versus depleting you and no longer serving you. When you understand yourself better, you kind of want to be around people who care to understand you as well. You seek real connection with people who are able to show up as authentically as you can, with people who actually make an effort to understand themselves too, just as you do. And I think that can be really hard to come by now more than ever. So naturally, your circle becomes smaller. At least this is what happened to me. And I found myself wanting to spend more and more time alone because it was harder to relate to those around me, or to find people who sought self-understanding the way I did. But what I will say is that the few friends I had remaining, our relationships became all the more strong and our connection all the more real. It seems to be a common experience amongst a lot of us who journal, the letting go of friendships or friendship breakups, the desire for truer connection. But I'm not sure if this is necessarily a bad thing. I think for so many people, they keep friendships in their life that may not be serving them or be good for them simply because they derive so much of their identity from others. But when you know who you are, all on your own, you are set free from this. You don't rely on anyone else to tell you who you are. I found for myself that the more I journaled, the stronger my sense of self became, and the less reliant I became on others for forming my identity for me. And I think that's really what it comes down to, the knowledge of self. Our whole lives, we grow up seeking our knowledge of self from other people, from how they might perceive us. But I think the more you intentionally document your life, things big and small, things that interest you, things you care about, things you worry about, dreams you have, the more you document this, the more you build your sense of self on your own, and the truer that reflection becomes, because your identity is then derived from within rather than from external perceptions, which are always unreliable, biased, or unpredictable. Now, I want to make it clear that I'm not saying friendships or relationships with other people aren't important. They are an integral part of our life experience. In many ways, I believe the point of life is to love others and to be loved. But I do believe that the most important relationship you have in this life is with yourself. And I do also believe that once you have a strong and deep relationship with yourself, you are then able to form stronger and deeper relationships with others because you went into those friendships already knowing what feeds your soul and what matters to you. So yes, I think journaling and being alone go hand in hand a lot of the time. But I also believe that in some ways we choose to be alone and we cherish the time that we have with ourselves. And like I said earlier, it truly does feel like the most important relationship you have is with yourself. And it's a privilege to be able to strengthen that relationship, to have the time, the ability to journal and be very intentional about documenting what you deem important to document. So I think the act of keeping a journal is something very, very special, and it gives us access to the deepest parts of ourselves. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. So that is everything I wanted to share today. I hope this didn't come off preachy or too out there. I'm not sure why this was on my mind lately, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm very curious if anything I said resonated with you or if you could relate to any of it. And I would love to know your take on this topic as well. Part of me worries that none of this made any sense, but I'm grateful to have this space to be able to share my thoughts with you, and I'm grateful for you being here and listening. So thank you as always for giving me company today, and I will see you in the next one.